certain things that successful companies were doing, independent of each other, but things that resembled each other. And that is where the term best practice came from. Now the problem is that we look at these things as though they are oil and water. And this is why we end up with things like this. We have best practice versus innovation. And this is the mental model that most people have. Would you agree with this? Sure. And basically, on one side, you're either going to do it for Jacob Nielsen or you're going to do it for yourself. When I came to Berlin on Friday, it was not my intention to hold a talk here. This is a bar camp. This is an open forum for everyone. But let me tell you, when I got here yesterday, the first thing I saw was this sign. What is your opinion? Innovate versus iterate. I said, oh, Christ. And then the session started. And so throughout the day, I don't have to say something about this. So here I am, and here are you. Listen, if you're going to do it for Jacob Nielsen, if you're only going to build your industry on best practice, you're never going to build the industry. And on the other hand, if you're doing it for yourself, I assure you, you're doing it for the wrong reason. So let's go through some of those bad reasons. These are, by the way, not bullet points. These are bullet hole points. And they say you can't customize PowerPoint. So, obviously, people want to differentiate their product and service. They think that this is some kind of magical way in which we're all going to become competitive again. Or because we want to be original, or because we as designers have some crazy ego that needs to be fed. So let's just quickly look at this. This is an honest-to-God car. This isn't Photoshopped. It's an automobile from about 1910 called the Octo Auto. Octo as in octopus. Octopus has eight tentacles, and the Octo Auto has 8 wheels. And they argued that the tires would last longer, and you would get better gas mileage. And there were a lot of claims that I really don't understand. And to be perfectly frank, I spent 25 years in advertising. If I don't understand where these claims came from, there's a really serious problem. I know how to spin this shit. The idea, though, was that we want a smoother ride. That's a good thing. And trains, they have these double bogies, and they ride very smoothly. So obviously a car with 8 wheels must also travel more smoothly. Until you actually look at roads back in 1910. And about the only thing I can say with certainty about the Octo Auto is it's going to take at least twice as long to dig it out of the mud. This is a fuck-all stupid idea, the Octo Auto, but it was very innovative. It was very original. Pushing the envelope is not innovation, my friends, nor is shindugu, as the Japanese call it. Shindugu is useless innovation. I'd like to show you one. These are the sushi shades. So when you go to your favorite sushi restaurant and they have run out of chopsticks, I almost don't dare tell you this is a German invention. It's true, it's true. Being original isn't necessarily innovation. Satisfying your ego is not innovation. There is a linear progression. This is Marconi, back in the 1890s. He was working on radio telegraphy. In 1892, he sent the first wireless transmission in London over a space of a couple of 100 meters. Throughout the 90s, the 1890s, he improved his product, and he then patented his invention. And in fact, in 1909, he shared the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on radio telegraphy. Now, how many here are from Hungary? Croatia. Yeah, see, we all know that Nikola Tesla should have had it, okay? It wasn't Marconi's Nobel Prize, but we don't want to get into any politics here, do we? So, Marconi wins the Nobel Prize. He's experimented. He came up with an invention. Is that then the innovation? Because it solves all of the questions that are posed by that dictionary definition. It's a new idea, thing, product, yada yada. No, my contention is that this is the innovation. Does anyone recognize this picture? Any ideas? What? A post office. No, it is a Marconi operator. It is somebody actually working a wireless. I'll put a date on it. Almost 100 years ago to the day. Anybody want to tell me what this is?
First TV.
The Titanic, exactly. The Marconi apparatus, radiotelegraphy, was seen as a method by which ships could signal to each other when they were in distress, when they were out of sight, or out of range of horns, or flares, or other kinds of signals. And what happened was that on the night of April 15, 1912, the very first wireless distress signal was sent out by the Titanic, received by the Carpathia. They came rushing through the night and managed to rescue 710 people who would have drowned in the mid-Atlantic. That, for me, is the innovation. Brussels keeps telling us about we have innovation problems. You can't open a newspaper anywhere on the continent without somebody telling us we need to be innovative. And yet, we go back to invention, or we confuse the idea of something just being new as being innovative. And I think that this is fundamentally wrong. For me, there is only one reason to innovate. And that is to solve a problem. It is as simple as that. And I realize there are people out there, Scott Bergen and others, who say, well, problem is such a negative word. It should be providing a solution. He said, no, screw. It is solving a problem. And I'll tell you something. My first law of innovation, if it does not solve a problem, it is going to create it. Stick that in your 140 characters. Mouthwash. Mouthwash has a tendency to sort of be the same. It's all kind of blue and minty, and it doesn't really do very much, but it makes you feel good in your mouth. Now, we have something called Zendium in Denmark. I don't know whether it's sold in Germany or if it's sold under another name. But the people at Zendium decided that we're going to be innovative. So they came up with a dosing mechanism. What you have to do is you have to put this thing flat on the table and squeeze it. And I'll show you how this works. If I can find my cursor. There it is. So you squeeze it, and then it fills up like this, and then, of course, it slops over the side, and then it sucks out the excess. So you get a very precise dosage. You sort of wonder, are people ODing on mouthwash? What is this about? I showed this slide in the Russian Federation. This man put up his hand. In the Russian Federation, there's a big problem. Many people, they are drinking mouthwash because it contains alcohol. It's a very big problem in the Russian Federation. Now let's analyze this. For Christ's sake, would you rather drink mouthwash or vodka? It makes no sense whatsoever to drink mouthwash. Now, and please don't try this at home. This woman is a trained professional. This is my dentist. This is my dentist, and I asked her, how does it work? Innovation. Innovation. See, problems don't exist in isolation, and that's incredibly important to remember. Solutions also often have unintended consequences. I'd like to tell you a story. Excuse the coughing, I have a cold. I have some cough medicine. There are three things that you need to think about when you innovate. There will be technological consequences. Those are often the ones we're called upon to solve. But there will also be social and political consequences of anything we do. And it's important to remember all three of these things. I'll tell you a story. Back in the 1830s, 40s, the United Kingdom had conquered pretty much all of the Middle East, Southern Asia, parts of China. The sun never set on the British Empire. Now, at the time, the guns they were using are what are known as muzzle-loading muskets. Now, muskets are like really, really long. And muzzle-loading, that's where the bullet comes out, okay? That's the front, the business end of the gun. So a muzzle-loading musket works like this. First, you take your powder horn, and you pour in some powder. And then you have this long rod, and you tamp it down. And then you take your mini ball, and you put it in, and you tamp that down. And then you take some cotton, and you put that, and you tamp that down, so that it doesn't roll out when you have to raise the rifle, the musket. So you pick this thing up, and then you cock the flint, and you fire. And that's how it works. That's a muzzle-loading musket. So let me ask you a question. Why would you ever want to fire a second bullet on a field of battle? You didn't get them the first time, exactly. And what does that mean? That they're firing back at you. And what is the last thing you want to be doing? Is standing up there with this 2-meter tall thing. So, the British Army went to the Lee Enfield Company, because they made weapons, and said, we need a breech-loading musket. The breech, that's where you cock the hammer. And so the Lee Enfield people came up with a technologically innovative solution to a known problem. So what they did was they took the black powder and they measured it out, and they put it in small packets of greased paper. Greased so it didn't get wet, so it didn't...
Eric?
Yes?
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. I need all the bottles because the... poured in the stuff, took out a mini ball, and fired it. Easy. Great technological innovation. Now, a couple of questions. As I say, there are social and political consequences of any good innovation. Who were the British fighting alongside in the 1840s and the 50s? Who were the native troops that were helping them? What?
Hindus and Muslims that don't like pork.
There were Muslims and there were Hindus. And what's the one thing you don't want in your mouth?
Pig fat.
Exactly. Pig fat or animal fat. How did the Lee Enfield people create these little greased sachets?
Pig fat.
And there were revolts throughout the empire. The Brits almost lost India, the jewel in the crown, a century before Gandhi came along. There was nothing wrong with the innovation, but there was a lot wrong with the innovation in terms of social and political context. So when we do our iPad apps, when we do something, some kind of automatic check-in, when we're start to use QR codes instead of boarding passes at airports, what are the political and social consequences of this? We can do it technologically,
But what does this actually mean? What are the security risks? What are the risks to us if we lose our phone? There are all kinds of things that we need to be considering. So I beg you, please, innovation goes three ways, and you have got to think about all three of these things. Moving on. This is from the island of Palma in the Canary Islands. And the city fathers in Santa Cruz, which is the main city, in their infinite wisdom, and probably because they had read the ADA 508 and knew all about accessibility, they have decided that they need wheelchair ramps. I've never been in a city that has as many wheelchair ramps as this little bitty Spanish town. There's a bridge going across the river, and for those of you who are interested in ships, that's a copy of the Santa Maria that Columbus sailed to America in. Now, the thing is, if we move this picture down a little bit, kind of didn't really think through the problem here. But the picture is interesting because it actually demonstrates the three things that I think are critical when we do talk about innovation. The first is, obviously there are people, there are users, they are our clients, our customers, whatever we want to call them. Secondly, there are processes of some kind that we want to help them through, and to that end there are technologies, affordances, whatever, that will help them achieve that. It's our job to make sure that that journey is as smooth as it possibly can be. It isn't always. We can build lots of wheelchair ramps, but if we do something stupid like this, we're not actually solving the problem. This is Gus the cat. I show you Gus the cat because he's a user. And what he uses, well, he's using shrimp right there. But what he uses is Whiskas. And Whiskas, this happens to be lamb with peas. And if you look closely, you can see there's some little green things in there, and those are peas. And Whiskas is the only cat food company that I know of that puts peas in their cat food. They're very innovative at the Whiskas factory. Now, the interesting thing is, in terms of user research, nobody bothered to ask Gus the cat what he thought about vegetables. Gus the cat, though, spits them out. It's very simple user testing. I did it into my kitchen. I did the documentation with my phone. We talk an awful lot about user-centered design. We have a tendency to put these users under a microscope. We go and we look at them for a little while, and then we go home and we do whatever we do, and we forget about the users until somebody complains, or somebody dies, or something else happens. In truth, we might consider user-driven design where we invite our users to become a more active part of the design process. Our users are actually not quite as stupid as we like to make them out to be. We know that they don't necessarily hold all the answers. We know that their design solutions are not necessarily good because they are not trained designers. However, they know how to work a blender. They know whether their cat eats vegetables. They know whether the car mirrors can be adjusted while you're still sitting in a comfortable driving position. These are all basic usability issues, and it's amazing. Is this not working?
Hello, wait. Hello.
So I encourage you to get the users involved in this process. I think it's important, and I don't think that we do it often enough, and we spend a lot of time talking about user-centered design, but I'm not really sure that that's the right word. Not if we really want to be innovative. And the thing is, unhappy customers are really, really dangerous. You know, in the old days, we used to say, well, you know, if you have happy customers, they will tell, on average, 1, 2, 3 people. Of course, if you were an unhappy customer, you told, on average, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Told on average about 17 customers or 17 friends. And today, of course, you know, we're telling Twitter and Facebook and TripAdvisor, you know, we're telling Google. And some of you may remember this slide from my service design presentation a couple of years ago. It's still very, very relevant because a lot of us are in the software business, and let's face it, if people don't like it, it's really easy for them to complain. And they can ruin a brand from one day to the other. We've seen it with Dell Computers and Jeff Jarvis and Dell Hell. There are a lot of ways to go wrong, so please talk to your users. They generally have some ideas as to at least what the problems are that they need solving, even if they don't have the solution. Now, this is another key point, and that is that invention can be accidental, but innovation is always a planned activity.